Hi, my name is Charlie McGrath. I'm the founder of WideAwakeNews.com and a host on the Rinse Radio Network. A collapse crisis. Do you believe that it could happen inside the United States of America? Now, I'm not talking about the Middle East, North Africa. We see a destabilized region of the world there. People are killing and dying over there almost every day. I'm not talking about Europe, where you have a sovereign debt crisis and you have austerity being implemented and millions of people who have been marching in the streets over the last couple of years, promising to only get worse and worse. I'm talking about right here in the United States of America. Could we have a collapse crisis affect every man, woman, and child in this country? If you do not believe that it is possible, then I've got something to tell you. You should.
Because they do. Hundreds of millions of rounds of ammunition over the last year. And in fact, earlier this year, private investigator Doug Hagman reported that an inside source of the Department of Homeland Security said that the government is planning for exactly that, civil unrest, crisis, breakdown, all related to the dollar and the destruction of the U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency.
Here's how our collapse crisis scenario unfolds. We all wake up on a Monday morning to find a European nation has defaulted on its sovereign debt. Now, with a notional value of over $1 quadrillion of derivatives floating amongst the too big to fails, we have panic and pandemonium in the markets, falling so far, so fast, that breakers kick in, shutting down the markets on a Monday. The ever-optimistic mainstream business media talks about solutions in 2008 and how they can apply now. However, this doesn't work, and on Tuesday morning, the plummet continues, causing breakers to kick in once again. This time, the Federal Reserve has to step up, along with Washington, D.C., and talk about how a closed-door session of Congress to hammer out this sovereign debt issue is in order. So on Wednesday morning, optimism reigns. The markets raised 200-300 points, waiting for a 10 a.m. press conference at which all hopes of a solution are dashed and the sovereign debt landmine explodes across the United States of America. Instead of solutions, they talk about limited martial law, they talk about bank holidays, and they talk about knuckling down as a people to get through this crisis. Pandemonium reigns. Now, we have a state worker who him and his wife are prepared to an extent, and they understand and have talked to one another about if there was a crisis, man-made or natural, their number one goal is to get home. Because this crisis came on so fast and hit so hard, our state worker is trapped in the office when the news comes down. They already have people lining up outside wondering what is the government going to do to them. They have people lining up outside of bank ATMs because they're not working. The people are literally stuck with the cash in their pocket. Our subject in this scenario has a choice. He can either wade through the crowds, wade through the protesters, wade through the rioters to get to his vehicle and hope to make it home through a busy business district in town, or he can grab his to-go bag and hit the road with the goal, one and only goal, of getting back home with his loved one.
The plan is simple. Get home. No matter what it takes. If you can't get there in your vehicle, if you can't get there by transportation, then you get there on foot. But you work this out with your family, your loved ones, in a crisis situation where you cannot communicate or when the way home isn't safe, your normal way home isn't safe, you get home regardless of what it takes. This is us working our plan. After making the decision that leaving any populated area has to occur, my first goal was to get away, get out, be in a position that I felt safe and not worrying about being involved in any crisis that's ongoing. The second thing I want to do is find a spot where I can inventory, look through, make sure I know what I have in my 3-day bag or my make it home bag, and that's what I'm about to do now. Here comes the rain. Even it's only been about 2.5 hours since we left the Capitol location. We've managed to get basically in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we haven't seen a person for at least an hour and a half. We're within a mile, probably 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles of city limits, yet we are out of any kind of chaos or carnage that might be going on in a crisis situation. Now, this might seem extreme. It might seem an extraordinary action that we're taking in order to avoid people, but we got to realize that recent history has taught us that in a crisis, people don't act out of respect to other people. People act out of fear and panic. And when that mentality sets in, it seems to spread like cancer. So, our plan is, from the beginning, is if we were trapped in a situation that turned into a crisis, and our base was home to get to, because that's where we had the most prep material, and that's where we could hold up the longest and avoid being in a crisis. Our goal is to get home, and to do that, we want to do it safely, without contact as much as possible with anybody else. We have about an hour and 15 minutes before it's dark, and we found a spot. Neither myself or my brother, who's a cameraman there, have been to this spot. We knew the approximate route we wanted to take, and we'll share that later tonight around the campfire. We have a map. We can show you what our plan was from the get-go. But at about 3 hours, 15 minutes, we found a spot. It's flat, a lot of moss on the ground, so it's not really hard and rocky. A lot of dead wood around. We can have a fire, and completely out of sight. And you can hear there's a train in the background. We're literally circling the city, and behind these trees, behind me, you can probably see some of it behind me, between the trees. We're probably about 1.5 miles from the city limits, yet completely alone, completely out of sight, out of mind. We're at a location that's fairly high tonight. The temperature will probably be in the high teens to low 20s at best. So we're settling in and going to have some of our bi-emergency foods and try to make it through the night.
In preparing for a crisis situation, it's important to realize that there's a really good chance that when crisis hits, we're not going to be at home at our safe location. Our subjects in this video are awake. They've spoken with one another. They've spoken to their friends and their family. They understand that in an event, a crisis event, both man-made or otherwise, their number one goal is to get home. This is really important. If we don't understand what our loved ones are doing, we are going to waste a lot of time and energy worrying about what they're going to do and where they're going to be. I think being mentally prepared for a crisis event is every bit as important as being physically prepared for a crisis event. Now, if you look at this map, you'll see the red route. This is the most direct line from work to home. It's about 10 minutes by car, but unfortunately, it passes right through a busy business district with a lot of banks, a lot of grocery stores, areas that we want to avoid at all costs in a breakdown crisis situation. Again, we got to remember our goal. It isn't to fight our way home. It is to get home with our loved ones. We are no use to our loved ones if we are damaged goods by the time we get home. The yellow line represents the route that we took. This takes us directly out of town and directly into the hills where we virtually saw no one. The white star represents where we spent the night, and the white line leading out is the path we chose to take home the following morning. Now, this path was chosen because, again, it takes us away from the city, away from the business areas, and takes us through a residential neighborhood to the railroad tracks, which brings us very close to our home safe location. I'll show you real quick this cooking pot that I recently picked up. Kind of torn because it was a little bit spinny. It was about $70, but it is really handy. It's very light, and it has a lot of things that come with it. So this is a strainer cap. You can strain your pasta. A couple lids if you want to cap off what you made. What I liked about it is I can add it. Like I said, it's lightweight, and I can put my fuel cell and 2 bowls and 2 cups in there. So let me just show you real quick here. We got 2 bowls that are put together. Actually, there's a bowl and a cup here. You know the difference because the cup has an insulating ring around it so it doesn't burn your hand. And then the fuel cell that works underneath this little stove, which is really handy. Set this light off so you can see. It really puts out a flame, and it heats water very rapidly, which it seems like extra weight, but when you consider we can have our water boiling in just a few minutes rather than putting it on the fire and waiting for 20 minutes to get a boiling pot of water, it definitely seems worth it. I was trying to figure out
what scenario to use in making this video. Would it be a natural disaster? Would it be some kind of civil unrest because of political strife that we see going on, especially with election season? But the reason I chose a sovereign debt crisis and leading to a situation where people were basically loss of hope, loss of common sense, and grief-stricken and panic-stricken all at the same time is because I believe that's the most likely scenario to pan out, to play out. We have daily news now. Of course, it's not covered as much because of our election season, silly season, but daily news coming out of Europe, sovereign debt problems in Europe, and it's been going on for years. We've seen our national debt grow from 8 trillion to 16 trillion in the term of almost one president. The problem is this debt can never be repaid, and it's completely by design.
A lot of people believed in 2009 it became mathematically impossible to pay back the sovereign debt of the United States. And to illustrate this, let's look at the money supply as of 2009. Trust me, it's far worse in 2012. But in 2009, the M0, the actual bills and currency and coins that were in circulation, either in people's mattress, in their pocket, or in the bank vault, was $908 billion. The M1, which was the M0, plus checkable fundage, money you had in your account you could write against, was about $1.7 trillion. The M2, which is all of the M0 and the M1, plus money markets, plus CDs, was $8.5 trillion. In the year 2009, our sovereign debt was $12 trillion. Again, far greater now. But in 2009, with a debt of $12 trillion and actual money, the physical money that is out there for the government to collect was $8.5 trillion, it was mathematically impossible for us to pay back our sovereign debt. This is what happened. This is what we've been warned about throughout history by our forefathers. When you give control of a nation's finances to private central bankers, they will first destroy the country through inflation, and then they will depress the country through deflation, and the people will end up paying the price. This is why I believe crisis, breakdown.
Saying our Federal Reserve System is doing everything in its power to enslave the people of this country. And in fact, they're, with their cabal of bankers around the world, central bankers, they're doing this globally. And, I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but you certainly have to step out of the mainstream media to understand, and the mainstream information system to understand what's being done. We're creating money at debt. Now, our Constitution prescribes for something different than that. Our forefathers understood what happened when you gave private bankers the ability to set the value of your money. And they understood that if you let that happen, you would wake up in a nation that was no longer yours, and here we are. I picked sovereign debt, a sovereign debt crisis, to be the scenario in this video for one reason, because I believe that's going to be what is unleashed on the people, not only of the United States, but the world. And I believe it's by design.
And by design is exactly what it appears to be. Look, the world is drowning in debt. Yet the bankers of the world, the central bankers of the world, offer a solution, and that solution is more and more and more debt. But with this debt comes loss of sovereignty and implementation of more and more and more austerity. This is why we see rioting throughout the world. Don't kid yourself. What you see going on in the Middle East that started as the, quote, Arab Spring is nothing more than people rioting because they were paying 50, 60, 70% of what they earned in order to put food on the table because their economies have been destabilized. We're seeing the exact same thing inside of Europe right now, and you can be rest assured of one thing. The plan doesn't stop with Europe. It will come to the United States. We must be mentally prepared for what's coming.
All right, it's about 6 in the morning, 10 to 6 in the morning, and it's cold. Probably high teens last night. We've been up for maybe half hour, started the fire again.
and we're waiting for a little bit of daylight. You probably can't see in the camera, but over my right shoulder is that's due east, and we have just a hint of the sun. Look, here's the deal. I mean, it was extremely cold last night. I'm really glad we came out and did this because you know, Montana in late October is every bit as cold as other parts of the country in dead winter, and it gives you an idea of what you're going to be facing in a real crisis situation where you have to potentially live outdoors for a period of time. I believe at this point in time, the only thing we can do is prepare. I think it's inevitable we will see some kind of a breakdown. And, you know, my hope is it never is this extreme for anybody, that they're going to have to leave their home, leave the comfort of their home, maybe have the ability to have energy in their home, and have to figure out how to cook things and stay warm and avoid people. But, you know, look at the world. Look at where we're at. Edge of a fiscal cliff, debt that's not payable. We have wars. Every time you turn on the TV, there's talk of a new one. And the same promises by the same people that are getting us nowhere. So it's if you have loved ones, or even if you care for your own safety and your own future, I think mentally preparing is always the first step. Understand that a situation like this, even though it's cold and dark and scary out here in the middle of the woods, an extreme, it's a situation that we might face. So getting mentally prepared for that, making a plan, and working the plan is mandatory. Give you an idea how dark. This is at 6:30 in the morning. Camera's having a hard time focusing. 6:30 in the morning, pitch black, and it's on night mode. West end of Helena, we've skirted all the way around to as far as we can and still see city limits here. We're going to drop down in, pick our way across the path, the trail that runs by the railroad tracks to get to our safe location. Almost home. Okay, coming off the mountain here where we spent the night, certainly much faster getting to this point. We were about 3 hours getting in. I'm only about an hour and a half getting out. I want to show you on our plan, again, all this was to avoid any human contact. Now we've seen exactly one person since we began this, so it's paid off that way. It's proven that we've proven that if we take a route around town, that instead of a 5-mile journey straight to home, we've turned it into about 10 miles, but we will be returning home, and we will be doing it without having any contact or conflict. If you can see behind me, again, this is the west end of Helena. It's probably hard to make out, but there's a straight black line. That's a railroad track down immediately after the city limits. We're going to get on there and take that for about another 1.5 miles, and that's going to get us to within 1/2 mile to 3/4 mile of our home.
Because it's all about getting you home safely in one piece to your friends, your family, your loved ones. Because without you, your family is nothing, and without them, you are nothing. Without that foundation, nothing else matters. I hope this video helped in showing the need to have a plan for something as simple as getting home from work in a crisis situation. I hope it helped prepare you for that kind of a situation, but more importantly, I hoped it helped to mentally prepare you for where we are right now and where it certainly looks like we're headed in the near future. It's time to understand that the mainstream media, the mainstream information sources are filling our heads with propaganda, and we must dig through this fluff if we want to know the truth and if we want to be prepared for a real crisis situation. I want to thank Carter McGrath, who trekked with me through all this as my cameraman. He certainly didn't have to, but I greatly appreciate it, Carter. Thank you very much. And I want to thank Ashley McGrath for the great equipment that she bought for Carter and I. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of the video. I'm going to go through what I had in my 3-day bag. Thanks. Hey, I wanted to take a minute to show you what I have in my 3-day bag, or my get home bag. And this really is a bag that I keep in my car all the time. I keep it close to me in case I have to, evacuate and get home. I want to make sure that I can get home to my loved ones. So obviously, it looks pretty bulky as it weighs, or as it sits right now. It's probably about 35 pounds. But I live in Montana. It's cold here, especially this time of year and going forward. So I got to have a good sleeping bag. I mean, this one, it's a good one, but it's not great. But it is lightweight, and I can keep warm as long as I'm in a shelter. I can keep warm to about probably 10 degrees in this. Anything colder than that, then I'm in trouble. But so I have the sleeping bag, and then the shelter that is allegedly only 7 or 8 pounds when I bought it. It sure feels heavier than that. One thing I would upgrade on for sure is a lighter shelter because you can really start to feel that one after a few miles. I also, on the bottom, I always put on an extra jacket or a coat. When we did this, I had just this sweatshirt on I'm wearing now, plus this, a long sleeve shirt, and then a long john shirt underneath that. So I was layered up pretty good, and that fought off the cold well. All right, going inside, I have hat, gloves, and scarf. That's always in there. I forget I even own them. They just stay in the bag. The fuel cell for my little camp stove right here. This pretty handy emergency bottle that Chris Atkins of Buy Emergency Foods gave me. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. It's got a chem light, a flashlight, a little first aid kit, an emergency blanket, a poncho, waterproof matches, a couple other items that, let's see, whistle and compass, a plastic bag for disposal or for storing food, and of course the bottle itself is pretty dang useful. And then the cooking kit, which I really did think that was a good buy after using it because it's extremely lightweight. That with the stove gave us hot water in about, or boiling water in about 4 minutes. And just for the, for the experience and carrying it, because in a crisis situation you would be carrying a gun. I brought my old model 1911 Llama Arms, very inexpensive but reliable handgun. So that was basically what made up the contents of the kit, except for two things. One, of course, I brought some food, and two, and this one's kind of important because I'm not trying to make a survival video. I'm not trying to show people how to whittle a canoe out of branches or something like that. I just want to show that an average person could be put in a situation that is a crisis or life-threatening. And myself and my brother Carter, who went with me on this little journey, we both suffer from asthma. So I always have a rescue inhaler, and this is a fluticasone for nasal problems. I always keep an extra prescription of them filled, and in my emergency bag, along with a knife, with a fork, spoon, and the whole shooting match, and another magazine of ammunition. So that was basically what I had in my kit. The one thing that was new that my sister-in-law actually bought us, her name is Ashley. Ashley bought Carter and I these things right here, and I've never had one before. But it's a little helmet or a head-mounted lamp, and I'm telling you, this was the most handy, useful item that I've ever had camping. I mean, it was just great. And first of all, it lasts a long, long time because it's LED, and it completely frees your hands to do work or whatnot while you have a good source of light. All right, this made up the kit.